our 2021-22 budget. We're actually doing great. There's a timeline that the state puts out on doing a budget, and they have at this point still getting department proposals and estimates, and so we're doing very well. And it's not until March 20th that we have a deadline for our tentative. So this is the first proposed. So I think hopefully we'll be able to work through it. This first one, as Deb and I were saying, is less ugly than the very first one that came up. So to begin with, the page that is helpful is page 2. And that, remember, is kind of our listing of all our funds. I always say water and sewer, et cetera, they're great just the way they are. They're the wealthy uncle. We're the poor stepchildren in the general fund, and that's really what we're focusing on. What we really want to focus on is under the general fund, in that second quadrant, it says appropriated cash, used surplus. And, you know, the first kind of draft was, as I say, ugly and high. This is 697, 863, which again is higher than we want. It would be great if we can, you know, I'm sure there might be a few things that get added to this budget, but then we'll hopefully take away some things. It would be great to have that figure, that use of surplus, at roughly 500,000 or less. So it's much better than it. Are you raising your hand, Jim? Oh, no. Okay, sorry. Certainly better than I think we looked at last year. So there you go. So often the way we do that is we turn to the next page, and we're beginning with our revenues, and we kind of just go down. I know I have something about the middle of the page, but if anyone has anything above that to focus on or bring to our attention, Cindy.
Near the top of the page, line 1130-000, utilities gross receipts tax. I'm not clear what that is, but it looks like it has gone down considerably. And I honestly don't know what it is.
There's actually a kind of a lawsuit, and Deb might be able to speak more about this because back last summer, she and Terry received communication, and we kind of joined a group lawsuit on it. There's a certain amount that is obviously being withheld from our gross, our utilities gross receipts tax, and it's they're going against, and Deb, chime in here anytime. Was it NYSEG?
I'm not sure exactly which company it was. I know there were a couple involved in the lawsuit, but the utilities gross receipts tax is a 1% tax we get from everything that is sold in that time frame. So each month we get gross receipts from several companies, AT&T, Time Warner, small companies. Some of them are 2 cents that we get checks on. Some are a lot larger.
But they've been withholding a certain amount. And so there's like a New York State action that we have joined into to try and recoup some of those withheld funds.
That's correct.
Yeah. So is there any other questions on that?
No, I have some.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, so we are anticipating that this legal action will produce greater revenues up to the 40,000 we're requesting?
We actually had in our budget, if you look back, the amount as of, remember, reflects on the 2021 budget, and we had anticipated 55. So we are half of what at this point, and we're a little more than halfway through our fiscal year. We have not garnered all our funds. We will get more funds, but we would love to be back up to that 55.
So I guess that is, I don't know if that's Cindy's question, but 2 times a little, does that prorated 26,000 get us to the 50, or does it get us only to 40? In other
Okay,
words, if,
so you don't look at the 40 right now, look at the 55. And we are 7 months in or more, because this is as of 2/9. So remember, we begin June 1, so January 1 would have been 6 months. That would have been halfway through our 2021 budget. So at that time, did we have in hand 27.5? No, we did not. We are a month beyond that. We're 7 months into the budget and we are down. And it's partly because a certain percentage have been withheld. So that's one thing. So I think this figure that got put in here, and Deb chime in, was because we're anticipating that this issue might not be resolved in a timely manner. So we don't want to put in 55 for this year if once again they're going to be withholding a certain amount.
okay,
That's correct.
okay,
Alrighty.
thank you.
Okay.
My next question is under clerk fees, which have also gone down almost in half, and perhaps that's a change due to a change in clerk, but it seemed unusual given the fact that we've been pretty consistently over 3,000.
Yeah, I don't know why that was put at 1,200. Is there a sense, Deb?
Why can't I rotate this sucker?
It seems that the clerk fees are going down for different things that we have collected it for in the past.
Yeah, but this would be largely, I would think, our death certificates and birth certificates. They have not decreased.
That's not under that category. That's under the
Oh.
A1601 health fees.
Oh, okay. So what exactly are these clerk fees?
I believe they are like the certain permits. Oh, I'll have to look that up. I don't know exactly the whole breakdown of them.
Like tax searches and that, I believe.
Right, right.
So it's just general stuff that we do. So tax searches are one of the bigger ones. They're $10 per copy. So maybe we've gone down with those.
But as of 2/9, we have 1638. All right, so we're really anticipating they'll continue at a precipitous rate to 12 for next year?
That didn't work.
Deb, is there a reason?
I was seeing a downswing on all of these over the last few months. If you think that might change, we can bring it up.
Well,
I mean,
just,
Do we know why they're going down, or is it just happens?
I would suggest bringing it up to 2,000. I mean, we're not through the year yet and we have 1,600, so.
I would concur with that.
And then my next one is parking lot and garage fees, which
Yes.
I also think are too low. I think they should be somewhere between 135 and 175.
Okay, so you didn't contribute that. I thought you might have contributed that figure, Cindy, and I was thinking, why is she going so low? And I didn't want to jump on it.
I mean, given the fact that the governor today suggested summer camps may open, I'd be inclined to go 175.
Yeah.
I agree with Cindy, 175.
Well, this is going to be a disaster.
Okay, I'm just trying to do a, so we went up. All right, anything else on that page?
I think the dock fees should go up a little bit as well, given the fact we just raised our dock rates.
That's what I was wondering. Was there any sense of that, Jean? We did increase.
Where,
Right,
which
and they
which
were
line
total-
item is dock
full.
fees?
You're down under culture and recreation, the
Right.
very first one.
Oh, docks, first one. I'm sorry. Yes.
I should have looked at that and figured out the math, but definitely it should go up because
We increased in town by 100 and we increased out of town by, was it 200? I'm sorry. Mitch,
200.
do you remember?
I don't remember off the top of my head now.
Okay.
Because I think,
Did you say the docks? Vote docks?
yeah, yep,
That went up to $13.50 for outside, and then inside village was $600, and then the $25 over 18 feet fee as well.
so they each went up 100.
At least,
Actually.
yeah.
So, and we have how many slips? 60.
Ooh,
Sorry, how many?
I'm not sure.
Oh,
There's 40 on each, I believe.
Yeah,
oh, 80.
but
Yeah.
they aren't all rented, remember, because we reduced some.
Right.
Remember, you wanted them to be for the smaller vehicle.
Those aren't even slips though. They weren't slips before.
At all.
Those are additional.
Oh, okay. I thought you were taking some of the interior ones closest to shore.
No, those weren't
Okay.
slips.
All right.
So 80 times 100 we should get, right?
Mm-hmm. Theoretically, it should be, 8,000 more then.
Yep.
So let's increase that to 58. Anything else there? I have something, and I'm trying to find the letter, but I can't at the moment. So we have calculated the usage of both, the fire department, the calls to Middlefield, the calls to Otsego. So that one is, we think, fairly accurate. You'll see under fire protection services, we're at 2262,000 near the bottom of the page. The fire protection services will be 61,872 in next year's budget. And then you have ambulance service, and they went up slightly because, as you recall, this is based on a completed fiscal year. So it's the completed 1920 expenditures. And in 1920, we purchased 2 ambulances. We also sold 2, so we took that off,
You mean 2020, don't you?
Did I say 1920?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, 1920.
2019.
2019.
Oh,
2020
okay,
budget.
2020. I'm sorry.
Yeah, budget. So those ambulances kind of went up a bit for the usage, though the usage stayed pretty much the same, the percentage. However, on EMS, there were, to the town of Otsego, there were a total of 78 calls. Now, this is outside mutual aid. That's why we can bill for these contract services. However, the EMS captain indicated that since Fly Creek now has an ALS service, they have also responded to some within the, I guess, the village,
Yeah.
I don't know, jurisdiction. I'm not aware of that, but he was feeling we should negate a contract fee for that. It's 24,106. And I said, well, that is something that would be for board discussion.
Well, in fact, they have done mutual aid to us for, I know at least of one case.
But don't forget, I'm not talking mutual aid. Mutual aid is not really sort of counted sometimes. There were 78 calls in the town of Otsego by our ambulances.
Okay.
Now, I would be comfortable if the board wanted having the amount, because Fly Creek did do a certain amount of response to us too, but it wasn't complete, that, as I understand it, that they had a full squad the whole year. So,
Right.
Ellen, do you know, guesstimating how many calls they responded to here in our jurisdiction?
he said a similar number. So he said it could have been as many as 70.
And so they're asking us to cut what we're charging them in half?
They are not asking anything. The
Oh, they're-
captain of our EMS said, should we, he would recommend not billing. I think that's a difficult because again, we base it on our actual 2019, 2020, and those were our actual expenses. And that would have been on 78 calls, that would have been the actual percentage of our expenditures.
I got to tell you, I asked Eric for a breakdown of all the calls to us and who answered them. And I'm looking forward to getting those numbers because it seems that we are, correct me if I'm wrong, Cindy, we are getting mutual aid coming into us more frequently now than we used to. Does that sound right to you?
I can only say based on listening to the pager that it does seem like there are a number of times that Fly Creek responds to calls in our district.
But also remember, it's not mutual aid per se. If the sequence is, if it goes into control center and our squad doesn't respond, it can go to a private service. It'd go to AMR often.
Yeah, but it's going to Fly Creek often. At least that's what I hear on the pager. I have no numbers to back that up.
Okay.
And I'm trying to get those numbers.
So just to give you a ballpark, the squad responded to 383 calls last year. 153 of those were in the village of Cooperstown. This is just annual. This isn't the monthly you asked for, Richard. This is what we use to calculate those percentages. Richfield Springs, 5, Burlington, 1, Cherry Valley, 14, Hartwick, 6, Middlefield, 83, Milford, 7, Otsego, 78, Richfield, 2, Roseboom, 8, Springfield, 25, and we do have a contract with them, and Westford, 1. So this is the 383. So less than a quarter were,
and if that number is our actual expense, I guess I wouldn't be inclined to say that we should just eat that cost if it's over $24,000.
Yeah, unfortunately, I just shot. Deb and I were finalizing these figures the other day, and I realized I didn't get the final one back because we had to add in the credit for the sale of the 2 ambulances. So I don't have those right in front of me, but to tell you what those actual expenses were. But we obviously had those expenses. They were essentially, and again, I'm sorry, I double checked my email, but I didn't have a final copy of those fire department EMS expenses. So I can't tell you the percentage. That 78, well, we could easily sort of figure out 78 divided by 383, and you're going to see the percentage. But then it's multiplied by the actual expenses.
I'm inclined to say no, that we should not proceed with cutting that.
I could, as I say, I could see way clearer to decreasing it by 50%, but certainly not eliminating it because there was response. Okay, so is there a motion? Let's make a decision on this one. Is there a motion one way or the other? And let's vote.
I'll make a motion to that effect.
To have it by 50%. So
Yeah,
we
what you
would charge
suggest,
12.
what you suggested, Ellen.
Okay, $12,053 would be the Otsego ambulance service contract price, which I think is quite a bit less than prior years anyway. Okay, so that's the motion. Is there a second for discussion? Joe Membrino has seconded. And Cindy?
Well, I wonder if this is something we need to come back to next week when we have the actual costs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to
Yeah,
look at
Deb,
some
can
more.
you possibly, I did email right before the meeting and I apologize. You probably aren't at a computer where you can send it. For some reason, I never got the final on that.
I did send it.
You did, okay.
Yeah.
I Googled your name and the search comes up where I sent you my draft. And then you said we sold the ambulances for 20,000 and 20,500. So then I came in and we worked on the figures and I don't have it after that,
Okay.
the completed one. So we certainly can come back to that if you want next week.
I think that's a good idea.
All right. It's not, essentially, it's not gonna change anything. The figures are what the figures are. You'll just see that that was their percentage. And if you take 78 and divide it by that number, 383, you'll know what we calculated as their percentage of our ambulance usage.
So 20%.
They were close to 20%. Yeah. So, and then we took 20% of the total expenditures. So that gives you an idea. All right, we'll come back to that one. And you know what, when I get that, I will send that around to everyone, the calculations, so you have a clear sense. All right, moving on to page 4. Anything?
I
Actually,
have one
Oh,
thing on
okay.
page,
Okay.
I have one thing on page 3, but it's not numbers related. The line for departmental income is in the wrong spot.
Yes, and I talked about that with Deb, and she's not able, this is an Excel sheet. You would think it would be easy to change, but she's actually had worked on it and worked on it. So
Okay.
I did remind her of that. She'll try again, but it's not something easily remediable.
What page are we
and
on? I'm
I had
sorry.
something about the boat launch. Is that something we could visit?
It's not right. Oh, the boat launch invoiced. We could, I think, again, this is going to be, wasn't there someplace, wasn't the steward somewhere else?
The cost of the stewards is obviously in the
A different spot.
right, but the boat launch, we're not charging anything, so we have no
Mhm.
income, and maybe
Right,
that's
and that would be one I'd like to circle back on,
Okay.
only because what it will entail is, and there is money in there for kind of a steward, and we can have that discussion more detail when we get there.
Okay.
How's that? Because I think otherwise we're fabricating a number now without thinking of the expense side of it. So we'll circle back on the boat launch. All right. Were we done with page 3? Page 4.
I would suggest about a third of the way down, line 2591, parking permits. Increase that number. I would increase it to 20 once again.
As we have done.
What was that number, Cindy? I didn't catch that.
It's 2591 parking permits. It's at 16. I would increase it to 20.
Do you think we'll hit 10.8 more this year? Probably.
We sell most of our permits in the month of May, so they'll be credited to.
That's why I'm saying, and you think most of those will be in 10.8. Okay. All right, so we are increasing that to 20,000. All right. Anything else?
Who's ever got the background noise? Could you mute yourself, please?
Is it me?
No, I don't think so.
It might be. It might be. Hang on.
That's better.
Anything else? Now we're on page 5.
The Tree Keeper software, which is about halfway down that chart under interfund transfers.
Mhm.
Mitch, I don't know if you found anything differently, but I can't get the Tree Keeper to work for me at all. So I'm not sure whether we paid it this year.
It doesn't work for me either.
It's showing that it never was paid under your thing. You can't tell.
I haven't followed up on it.
Okay.
Not
Why
I've
don't
never seen an invoice for it.
Okay. Cindy, you were the one who really kind of spearheaded all that. Would you please follow up and see where we're
Yep.
at on it? Thank
I
you.
will. And the other thing that I have, I don't know where it goes under income, is credit card fees. So we had said we were going to add a usage fee for the paid parking machines. I don't see that in here, but I also don't see a line to put it on.
It seems to me the only place we're incurring those credit card fees is on our parking.
Correct. And I think it will add about 6,000. I thought last year there was a line for credit card fees because we do bring them in, if people pay their water bill by card or something like that.
No, that's not credit card, Cindy. That's a different
No.
payment service.
All
So
right.
what happened, Cindy, if you recall, we had the vote and we did agree to add that 25-cent surcharge, but it was too late to get it incorporated in the machines you indicated to me. So we never really kind of included it in the budget. But our plan is to do it. And now we've had the software change done. So we will be able to recoup that 25-cent per transaction. So yes, and I think the place for it, do you remember, Deb, where we had it last year? We had it in, and then because we couldn't complete the software work on the meters to allow that, we pulled it. Do you remember that number?
No, I don't.
All right, but we will make sure that gets back in there. I think it was probably, it may have been under, I wonder if you put it under miscellaneous. I have no idea, but I think if you look at one of our early drafts of last year's budget, you'll see where it might have been.
I think it's about 6,000.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. All right, so for the next budget round, that will be in there. All right. So now we're finished with page 5 with our revenues, and we enter expenditure land. We are on page 6. Anything? Nope. Page 7.
Do we need to keep law other expenses at 10,000?
You know what? Let's double check. That's often if we've got a suit. So
Right.
that's hard to know, is anyone going to sue us between June 1st and May 31st in this budget year? So
What's her name? Down on,
she
what is it?
cannot. No, we can't do anything on that for another couple of years. So there will not be anything there. But I don't know. It seems like it's good to have that cushion. I think it did get used. Well, it did get used in 17-18, which is when that particular suit you're referencing occurred. So, if we don't, we're going to be without it. If not, it's not used. So whatever the sentiment of the board is.
I think we should keep it there. If we don't use it, good, but if we need it, it's there.
Okay.
Yep. Could do, okay, if we don't need to take it, but it's a point where if we have to balance, we can cut it out.
Yep. If we want to do that, let me I don't think I have this.
I'll highlight
The
it.
only other thing we need to do is I think we're gonna need to increase, you see clerk personal service, and again, this is not this is a component that would be in the general fund, not any component of their jobs that's covered by water and sewer. It's at 43.9, but we had a recognition that our minutes taker for our 3 boards is we had originally budgeted for like 10 hours per month, but it's actually averaging 24 hours per month. So let me quickly do that math. We need to increase that line, so at least we're more valid to what we're actually incurring. So
How many meetings are they covering?
3 meetings and all the minutes,
Oh, and typing the minutes up.
and making sure they're accurate, you know.
Yeah,
It's-
that's about right. That's about right.
It's an onerous task because they have to be, you know, they're often used in court, etc. So it has to be.
No, I'm not disagreeing, just asking.
Yep. So it's actually about 4,900. So it's got to be increased. Let me just calculate, because we already have 2460 budget in. Yeah, so I think we should add an additional 2460 to that line. So
Which line is this now?
we're adding it to 1410 100.
Oh, God. Okay, thank you.
All right. Anything else on that page? All right, so we're moving to page 8. I had a question on the fuel, Mitch. Does anyone have anything before 1620, 421? Okay, so Mitch, I just was wondering on the buildings, heating fuel. We're budgeting 10,000 gallons at 260, and I know our Mirabato, and it has switched, is it $1.69?
It is $1.69. I left it at 260 because I just wasn't sure what it was going to be like next year.
Well,
Okay, so that was my question. So that bid we opened in the snowstorm is valid only through 2021, and we'll bid again next December?
The end of the year we'll bid again. It's only till December 31st.
And you were thinking it might go up. Okay, so you bid it, so you estimated for this budget at 260, $1 more. Okay. Is there any sense that since, you know, much of this year will be at $1.69, this year will be at $1.69, is there a sense it could be a little less, like $2, average it out?
well, fuel oil prices just jumped by 30%.
Mhm. Right,
last
but this
couple of
is
weeks.
again 2022.
Right.
Okay. Mhm. I'm fine if people want the cushion.
Yeah, I'd like it.
Okay,
Agree.
all right. So we're staying with the 26,000. Anything else on that page? All right, then we're on to page 9. And there are a couple of things, I think, on the police budget. First of all, we kind of need to make a staffing decision, because if you recall in our pandemic budget of last year, that 3rd officer position, we did not fund that line. It was vacant and we didn't fund it because we made like $800,000 in cuts to our budget last year. So if we did fund it, it would increase that very first line, personal services, which is at 262, 953, request, that does not include that third position, which the department would like. And it would increase by 36,400, depending on the qualifications of the individual. If they aren't fully certified, they wouldn't be, that would be the pay that it would start at, certainly, unless we hired someone who was more certified, then it'd be a little bit more. So that comes to 299, 353 for
Why don't we-
personal services.
Why don't we make it around 300?
Well, this because it's the way we listed in the whole budget. So first, we'd need a vote that we are interested in funding that third officer position.
May I ask a question?
Uh-huh.
In view of the unfortunate depressed tourist season we may be facing, can you give some explanation of how the police department described the need for this extra position?
Mm-hmm. Historically, we've had it. It was vacant and we just didn't fund it last year. As you recall, we try and fill in with our part-time officers, because bottom line is we essentially have 2 full-time officers to provide all the coverage. Richard, I know, did get stats this month, and it told you how many hours were not covered. So what were those, Richard?
I didn't get those stats. I got the stats. I'm sorry. The stats I got were on the calls.
Right, but I thought at the bottom of that, I didn't print it.
Hold on, only reviewed.
You need your mix.
Nope, I don't have that. All I got was a 1-page. Yes, please, I do. All I got was a 1-page listing of the calls. I did not ask for the stats. I'll have to go back and ask for them.
Did you see that? Where did I see this? Why did I think I saw it on
Maybe
that?
you got it.
No, I was CC'd on your email, Richard.
Let me take a look. Maybe I didn't print it.
I'll go back. And let me
That
just
wouldn't be the first time I missed multiple pages. All right, so what do we got? Frank Cavallari. Interested.
15 8-hour shifts not covered. He put right there in his report. 15 8-hour shifts not covered. So to Joe, that kind of answers your question. We have 15
In what period of time?
in a month.
It's almost a full-time position.
Yeah.
28-hour shifts would be a full-time position. I am sorry, I don't see it.
It's in his.
Oh, there, and I say what he did. I got a different report than that. Yes.
I printed his email. That was his email. I didn't get a report.
Yeah, I got a report. That's why
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so
right now. Yeah, I'm going to make a motion that we fund that a third position.
Motion made by Richard, seconded by Jean.
Can we just
More discussion?
discuss?
Yeah, is there more?
Yeah. I just have a question. So those 15 8-hour shifts, those are no coverage or being covered by part-time people or being covered by
No coverage, no coverage.
No coverage. Okay.
Yeah. Are there any other discussion or questions? Jim?
Is
Do you
that
wanna
based
un-
on-
Do you want to, there, you're unmuted.
Yeah. I didn't know how to do that. Okay. I forgot what the question was. So if there's no coverage, the call goes to the sheriff's department and the sheriff responds?
And if the sheriff, remember, there's no sheriffs or deputies on duty during the night hours between, what is it? I don't know, 2 and 6 or something. So if it's between that time, it would roll over to the state police, who could be anywhere for response.
Ellen,
Yes.
those 15 8-hour shifts, that doesn't include between 2 and 6, right? We're talking about other periods of time during the day. Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem. Any more questions?
Yeah, question. So, to Mac's question, so these shifts vary throughout the day, throughout the month, the shift periods?
Mhm.
Or
Yeah, there's some people who work, we have one officer who prefers sort of the night shift.
Okay.
And he comes on at, I don't know. I don't want to say it because I might be wrong, but I'm saying like 5 to 1 or something like that. And others who covered the day shift.
So, are any of those shifts not covered during the day?
I do not know. All I know is there were 15 8-hour shifts not covered last month.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
I don't know which particular ones. I could surmise, but it would be a surmise.
Just on that point, if I could ask a question, what is the, hard to ask the question, 15 8-hour shifts falling within what part of the day?
That's what I just said. I do not know.
Okay.
I'm sure it's varied and it's probably also on weekends.
Yeah, it's mostly the weekends. We don't have much weekend coverage at all.
Yeah.
We were
Which is-
trying to hire, remember, a
when
part-time to
things
fill that.
tend to be busy.
Mhm.
one more.
I'm just, oh, Jim, go
Let me
ahead.
ask Jim.
Sorry.
Oh, Jim
My fault.
spoke first. I'll let him go first.
So if we fill this position, that means we're getting 100% coverage?
No, we never have 100% coverage.
No overnight coverage.
So
Well-
we're filling-
You will have an officer who covers 40 hours a week, which equates to basically what, five 8-hour shifts. Think of it that way. We are still 15 8-hour shifts weren't covered last month. So that still means 10 8-hour shifts would not be covered.
I see.
Mac, you had a question?
I mean, it was just more of a point, we didn't fill this, we left it unfunded because, no real induction, no induction last year, no, outdoor induction, probably, I hate to be pessimistic, but, no Dreams Park. I'm just wondering if this isn't another budget cycle away to fill it, but, I'm happy to go along.
All right. Well, there was a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? No? All right. So the motion is to fund our third full-time position and thereby increase the personal services line by 36,400 to a total of 299,353. All those in favor, raise your hand. All right. So, okay. All right, so that was increased. And then I know that there were some trustees had questions and I did too. So hopefully I've gotten the clarifications you want. First of all, we'll go to the 3120-200, which is like your third line, police dash equipment. And you will see it lists radios, desktop computers, for office. That's equipment that Kyle has recommended to the police department. Their computers are somewhat archaic. That laptop computers for vehicles, they found funds in this year's budget. So cross that out. That will not be in the 21-22 budget. And that will decrease that line by $5,000. So instead of 25,000, that will be 20,000. I know there was a question on what does that mean less than lethal? And, poor Deb has to try and fit all this info in. Now you have more space in the line since we've eliminated laptop computers for vehicles, but it was less than lethal equipment. But all that really needs to be listed there are 3 tasers and 2 shotgun conversion kits. And anyone who was on, and this would be Richard and Jean here, anyone who was on the community advisory board for the police reform plan saw some really interesting footage after there was the unfortunate shooting of the individual in Philadelphia, who's obviously having a mental health crisis. And though repeatedly being asked to stop, he kept moving at the police officer with a knife, and it did not, it was unfortunately ended in a fatality. To contrast with that, our police department had footage of another police department which utilized a beanbag gun. And it's basically a shotgun equipped with beanbag, and it stuns someone, might cause a little black and blue, but is not a, it's not fatal. It's less than fatal. And so rather than have shotguns, he was wanted to convert them to a beanbag firing. So that's included in there. So I don't know if there's any questions on that. Moving down, I wasn't sure what the 312470 police other expenses. The transition to RMS with the county system, that is the same police sheriff reporting system that the county has, RMS, which is record management system. And basically it's web-based and can actually be in the vehicle. Right now, if there's certain things, they have to come back to the office and use the office's computers because it's an SJS system. So these funds, a total of $8,000 would cover transfer of the SJS system over to the RMS system to be compatible with the county. And so it was a total of 8,000. I can't even read my scribbles. I know it's 5,000 for transfer and 3,000 for something. Sorry. So the other amount, and I asked him then, why is that high? And he said, well, there was discussion of uniforms. And I said, well, you know what? You got uniforms. We have a back room full of uniforms. You don't look that militaristic. What can we do? And he pointed out that last summer, you may have noticed they actually donned polo shirts during the summer months. So they will have uniform polo shirts. So we'll leave 1,000 in there. So that 13,000 for that line will drop to 9. I used to keep a running tally, but I'm having a little trouble doing it. So hopefully you are, Deb. And you at least get them all done. So when we refresh, we'll have a clearer sense. The other item here, the next one down, 312490 police vehicle expenses. It seemed like it jumped up a bit, and they have been having some issues with one of the vehicles, and they're just concerned that they might have some engine work that needs to be done. So that's why they increased that slightly.
Which one, if you know, by chance?
201. Joe.
Yeah, I know we've discussed this before, and but I'll bring it up again. It's because we're talking about the motors. Is there no other way to keep the computers heated up, fired up, other than running the motor? I mean, we can't have an EV connection at the curb or something. I don't. I mean, to plug in a power cord. You know, we left the meeting last night and the motors were out there running. Is that what
I know this often comes up, and I'll just refer that back to Richard and Jean on the public safety to follow up. I know it's come up in past years. They are so electric intensive that it drains the battery, and then they're just replacing one of those batteries all the time. And, you know, I'll have to say our solar powered, some of our solar powered equipment isn't quite as efficient as you'd like it to be to sort of regenerate some of that. So I'll let them follow up on that. Good suggestion. So that was the expense. The only other one is 3120-491 police vehicle expenses gasoline. We have recently, with this fiscal budget, with this 2021 budget, begun to categorize expenses. For instance, our heating fuel is per building, our gasoline is per department. So, you know, what does the streets department use in gasoline, the water department, et cetera, just help differentiate it a little bit more and track it. And so this is a little hard. These numbers won't necessarily be hard and fast, shall I say, in our budgeting, but that's why you can see that as of 2/9/21, the police had expended $1,890. So that's like half a year. But we also, you know, there was one vehicle that had a little body damage that was out of service for a little time for that. And there was another reason that Deb had indicated that there was maybe less vehicle usage. So certainly the 30 is excessive. It was very hard from the numbers that were given to try and figure out what would go in there when the police department was putting together their budget. But in discussion, we feel very comfortable with going with 9,000 would be more than enough. Joe.
Just a question on that. In the line above, that's where the repairs, for example, is 490 and redundant to 491 or vice versa?
No,
Is
49.
it just gasoline?
Correct. Fuel.
Okay, but you had mentioned, I thought you had mentioned in the context of this line, an auto repair, a auto body repair.
I did, only to say that it was out of service for several days, you know, so, and there was another incident where Deb said maybe the PEO wasn't using it as much as summer. I don't know.
And were you, okay, I'm still trying to, you mentioned 9,000 instead of 30. I'm just looking at the basically 2,000 to date. There's still quite a gulf between those two numbers. And I'm just.
Right, and I actually was thinking that it should be closer to 5 or 6, but, and you're perfectly legitimate to decrease it more if you wanted. Deb had indicated that she felt once the, you know, PEO becomes more active with ticketing and they have to go to different locales in the village, there just isn't time to go from, you know, it's dead time almost walking between our hospital zone and our upper Main Street zone. So there is more usage during the operation of, or during the more active hours of our parking enforcement officers. So she was thinking that, but if you are more comfortable with 7,500, put it at 7,500. Is that the sense?
Well, before jumping to the number, I just wanted quickly to understand, do we have the official vehicles and do they have personal use per diem or reimbursement?
No.
So this is just for a total of 3 or 2 vehicles?
2 vehicles.
Okay.
I keep a monthly track of what every department spends for fuel. I can put those together for the past 3 years and see what an average is.
That'd be great, Mitch. Why don't you do that? So we'll come back to that figure and see what we actually should be indicating. And you know, it'd be helpful, Mitch, if when you do that, you know, when we'll meet again in a couple of weeks with the revised figures that we're putting in now, but just shoot everybody an email and say, this is what I found. So, you know, this is probably a reasonable amount for police vehicle expense gasoline. As I say, we just don't have, you know, you look back on that line, we don't have actuals from prior years because we've never tracked it. This is the first year we're tracking it in our budget that way.
Yeah, I'll get those figures together and send them around.
Thank you. Anything else on that page?
I had a question about the cameras, which are listed on 3120-200 up at the top.
Mm-hmm.
So are those, I'm guessing those are body cameras?
No, they are not. Body cameras, when we've investigated that, could be as much as, you know, it's something that we think ultimately the government is going to sort of begin mandating more, and there'll be grants available, but we're talking like maybe $60,000 for this type of equipment, because it's the recording, the retention, everything you have to do with that equipment. This is, I believe, the vehicle cameras.
And it's also, Frank said they needed a camera for if they're interviewing somebody
Oh, in the department.
in the department.
Mhm.
And we're not providing phones that would do that even better than a camera you could buy today.
I don't know.
You mean provide a cell phone to the department?
Are we already providing cell phones? I thought we voted on that at some point.
That's in the budget.
It's not there.
I guess you're talking about these being video interviews where you're trying to take in the whole room
That's probably,
as well as the subject, so.
Yeah, so it says a couple lines down, 2 cell
Cell
phones.
phones, yeah.
My experience is that, because we're doing this all the time in school now, you can do much better in terms of recording with a cell phone than you can with a camera.
So you have one person, it would have to be focused on recording with the cell phone? Or you set it up in such a way it's stationary and just gets the whole room?
Yeah,
You can put a phone on a tripod for sure.
Yeah.
it's just something to think about.
Jean and Richard, you're on public safety. Why don't you go back and get more info on the cameras? Thank you.
Body cameras too.
We know that body cameras, we did look into this, and this is why I said it's going to be about $60,000. So we do want to do it, and we're hoping that, and it does seem imminent that some of those grants may be forthcoming on that to facilitate municipalities purchasing that equipment. Anything else on page 9?
If you don't mind, can we just run through the explanation of 3320-460, the $19,000 item?
2460. 31.
Yeah. 3320-460.
The $5,000 item?
I'm looking at $19,700.
Yep, so we typically, this is something that's always been in the budget. It just hasn't been, we tried actually to be more clear about it this year. So we pay $6,400 for the software that folks like me use to generate and Deb uses to generate how much we're making from each machine and how that goes week and the like. So that's the sort of back of the house bit. We pay $9,000 to open and close our machines. We budgeted $2,600 for repairs when something goes wrong with our machines, which are now, going on 7-8 years old. And then the last bit there is tangentially related to parking. That's our EV chargers, which also have a back of the house system that we need to account for.
So the comparable year for the purposes of review is 2021 to our proposed budget. The earlier years just quantified this stuff differently, so we can't really compare apples to apples.
That is, yes, it was these charges were in other places in the budget, and we tried to put them all together so that it was clearer how much parking costs us.
Thanks.
Any other questions on page 9? Page 10. No questions?
I have a couple questions related to the ambulance, and this is my naivete. There's a very small amount, honestly, for flexible stretchers. And I remember when we got the new ambulances, there was quite a discussion about the stretchers that came with them. So I don't know the difference between these that are slated for purchase and the ones we already have and why they are needed.
Okay. Again, I'll let public safety, Richard and Jean, follow up then with Eric on that.
And the other thing I have a question about is the PCR system, which I understand is fundamentally important. And I want to get a better sense of how much of that 6,000 is an annual fee for the software, just like we have an annual fee for the parking software, and how much is startup costs.
Okay. Thank you, Richard and Jean. All right, moving on to 11.
I got one thing for the fire department before we move on.
Okay, sorry, Mitch. I didn't see you.
Under repairs for the building,
Uh-huh.
I would like to try to add in the rear roof replacement. I was supposed to have that figure today, but I didn't get it.
So we're looking at 3410, 481.
Yes.
And we're looking that it would increase with a rear roof repair.
Correct.
Okay.
Just a repair, Mitch, or a replacement?
It would be a replacement.
But I should mention that the police and fire department both showed up at our house today, provided stellar service in putting out a chimney fire. So the troops know what they're doing and doing it well.
That's great. Okay, so is there anything else on page 10? Richard, are you trying to talk? We can't hear you.
You're still muted.
Yeah, I know. I was on a different screen. That's why I didn't see it. Mitch, what do you think it's going to cost to do the roof repair?
I really have no idea.
Can you give me a
40,000,
ball?
40 maybe?
40,000. Yeah, that sounds about. How many? Do we know how many square feet it is?
I don't.
You
Well,
said it's the back side, that smaller bay.
Yes. It's smaller, but it's long.
Okay.
Let's tentatively put in 30,000, and we can refine it over the next revision of the budget, just so that we know we have it in there.
Okay,
That's
and
the
I hope to get
motion.
a figure this week.
Thanks, Mitch.
Well, why don't we, much like we know that a figure is going to be added, so why don't we let Mitch, much like he's going to send us that figure on police department gasoline usage.
Okay,
so we
that's
have a more
fine.
accurate figure. He's awaiting a quote, so
Okay,
let
fine.
him.
Never mind. Thank you.
All right. Anything else on page 10? Moving to page 11. Can I ask about street maintenance, 5110 200, street maintenance equipment? We're buying a dump truck, 145,200. I couldn't see that we're utilizing any of our reserve, street equipment reserve.
I didn't put in for it, but we most certainly can.
Well, it seems like that would be, isn't that what, rather than funding this whole in 1 year, would it behoove us to look at like at least 50,000 out of that fund?
Yeah, we could do that.
All right, so we'll do 50 from street equipment reserve for that truck. And I think that was it. Oh no, then there's my absolute favorite line. Street 5112 440, street permanent improvement, contract, professional and technical. So can you walk us through some of this, Mitch and Cindy?
Well,
Go for it.
the Beaver Street sidewalk and curb is this section of sidewalk on Beaver Street, the north side from Fair Street to Pioneer Street. The sidewalk's poor. the curbs crumbling. I've had several people damage snow blowers because of chunks of curb that got plowed up this year. The Spring Street guardrail is just to finish the guardrail on Spring Street. And then the River Street paving and Elk Street paving is just it would clear up that section of town, and that would be all fairly new streets.
I guess, to me, one thing, last year when we were doing the budget, we were all kind of concurring that particularly, we'd always been doing a lot of street infrastructure because we were garnering, $450 a year from our parking revenue. And we kind of dedicated it to our major street infrastructure that we had been too long postponed and delayed in our village. But we recognized too that our revenue would be down and that our major project right now was Doubleday, and which needed funds. And so we were not going to focus quite so much. I mean, this is almost 100, we're back up to almost 200,000 there. And the Spring Street guardrail, is there any way to sort of get an equivalent of what it would be to paint the metal area and or replace with metal? The cost equivalency or cost benefit when we have one full-time resident at the top of that hill seems like 45,000 is a high amount.
I don't know the cost of metal guardrail, but I can look into that.
Okay.
The other things are all things that have been put off. So they were in the budget last year and we pulled them. I don't know how much longer we can continue to pull the Beaver Street sidewalk and the River and Elk paving.
I could live with those two. The guardrail seems like a lot.
Yeah, I think of the others, the priority would be the sidewalk because trip and fall is a serious issue. But River Street, I'm inclined to let that wait because it's a very, very low speed street, especially when there's parking on it in the summer. It's at least a stretch between Main and Lake. Are we looking towards a lot more than that? That doesn't seem like it's in such bad condition to me.
No, this is from Church Street to the top of Mill Street. That's where it's the worst.
In front of the hospital, basically.
Pretty beat up. I'd be inclined to keep it, move forward.
Yeah, as I say, I'm more than willing on the paving to move, but less so on a very pretty $45,000 guardrail.
The guardrail costs more than the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like not worth it.
So
Okay,
is there?
I'm on board.
Well, let's let Mitch. We're inclined to remove it, but Mitch, if you find that there's 20,000 for a metal guardrail, that might be something we would consider. So
Yeah, I'll look into it.
Yeah.
And if we could just evaluate the integrity of the existing metal fence, if it works to keep a vehicle from going over the edge, then I think that should be our only concern during these budgetary times.
I'm not sure it would keep a car from going over the edge. It might be worth driving up Spring Street to check it out.
Testing it out, Cindy?
Not testing it, but just go for a walk, take a peek.
I think those of us who do walk, will certainly agree that the guardrail that's there is extremely attractive. And it's also on the most precipitous curve. But the existing guardrail that is there is only in sections. There are other areas where you could go over. You just aren't going in a real deep area. You go off into a flatter space.
I have to
So
admit, I had to look up Spring Street.
all right, so we've removed the guardrail, but we'll see the cost on the metal guardrail. All right, if we 11, were we totally done with 11 then? 12. Mitch, we were just sort of wondering about this. Another trustee was questioning. I know 1,200 is about what we like to have, but sometimes we have some still in the stockpile, in the salt stockpile, so to speak. Is there any in there now?
Yeah, I think last I looked, we still have, I ordered 700 tons at the beginning of the year, and I think we still had some left over from last year, about 340. And right now we're sitting at about 700 again.
So we have about 7. So, any thoughts on that? Do we want all 12?
We could maybe cut it back. I would go to 1,000.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Basically, we have. So we'll take 200 out, 200 tons out at $66 a ton. Going down, the one and only entry under street lighting. Other expenses. Is that our electric usage and others? What predominantly the electric usage?
Yes.
So have we seen any real, was the only decrease really between 18-19 budget of 48,000 to the 2019-20 to 36? So we realized about $12,000 a year savings when we converted to LED. Was that the time?
I believe it is the time frame, yes.
Okay. So we do think that 35 is our fairly accurate number on with our LED lighting.
Yeah, I would think so.
All right. All right, so now we're at off-street parking and a lot of new equipment and new systems. Is this, are you talking about the ticketing? Okay, so can you explain the new equipment 5,000? Who put it in?
This is the police, I believe.
Police.
They put this in.
I do know that they had equipment that was not.
Well, I know their parking equipment, and then that's been along, and I know they're finally moving on, you know, speaking to people, but as a reminder, last year, when we were doing our budget, end of the year, I moved, you all approved moving 20,000 to police equipment reserve for our needed new parking equipment. So it would be coming from that 20,000. So I'm just wondering, you know, there's 22,000 for new equipment. I guess I just want to make sure if this is what we're looking at, it's being offset by the 20,000 that we moved to police equipment reserve last year. Do you see that anywhere, Deb? Did it get compensated like that, credited? All right, if we just make sure, I know that that was moved like May 28th, 2020, before we closed out, you know, that budget year. And, you know, we moved money for like the skylights. I remember, Cindy, do you remember?
Mhm.
Yeah, and we got an email on it. So Deb, can we just make sure we're offsetting those costs with the 20,000 we previously set aside?
I will check it out.
Thank you, appreciate that. All right, anything else? All right, moving on to page 13. Mitch, So our parks has not had a new tractor in a while. We're getting a new tractor.
Yeah, we give him a new tractor every 4 or 5 years.
And it's
He
been about
puts
5
quite a bit of-
years.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years. I think it was 15 when we got the current
Okay.
one, 15 or 16.
All right.
Is there anything wrong with the current one?
It's got a lot of miles, a lot of hours, a lot of use on it. It's getting to be in tough shape.
Okay, anything else? I know last year we had the lakefront water fountain in and we pulled it. It's back in again. Is there any sense that we might, is it a water fill station or bottle fill station? Or are we still thinking water fountain here?
For Pioneer, or did you say Lakefront, Ellen?
It's 7110 480 Parks Maintenance Repairs, Lakefront Water Fountain 2500.
I can't
This was
imagine
for,
using a water fountain.
we used to have one on the bathroom building, and
Mhm.
it got damaged. And I don't remember if I may let Dennis spec this out. And I don't remember if he got one that was just a water fill or, a water fountain, or one that had a water bottle filling station with it.
Yeah.
Gene, were
I mean,
there?
the filling station is ideal, given most folks are probably not going to be using a public water fountain without actually just filling a bottle, opposed to hovering their mouth over it, probably for some time.
I was wondering, maybe we should just wait on that one again, Gene.
I'm okay with pushing it one more year out if,
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we'll have a clearer sense. So we're taking 2,500 off there.
but I agree when we do it, we should do a bottle fill.
Or one that's both. Yeah, if need be. Because not everyone has a bottle, and 5 years from now, who knows? People may be comfortable again doing that.
Yep.
I have a question for Mitch on Council Rock stair repairs. You have 5,500. Was that,
Yes.
is that for the ones, like just the treads that are in bad shape?
Yes, that's a high estimate. The guy that gave me the price, of course, everything was covered with snow. So he gave a high estimate to do as, whatever was needed.
Okay. And I would say that Friends of the Parks is interested in helping us with that. So,
Okay.
Do you think the Friends of the Parks would be at all interested in helping with the survey costs at Ferry Springs? Because they're the ones looking at that.
great idea. Yep. I can certainly ask them about that.
Is that that's for across the street as well, right, Gene?
It's a whole
Both
survey.
sides of the road? Okay.
All right, are we ready to move to page 14? Anything, anybody?
I wondered about the chamber membership for Doubleday Field.
So did I. And obviously we had it in the budget last year and it hasn't been expended.
Yeah.
In, the 2021. So the Doubleday alone, not the village, gets a chamber membership? Do we know? Mitch, could you follow up on that and find out what's going on?
Which line and number is that, please?
It's under Doubleday Field, the third.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, I can look into this with the chamber.
With, I guess, Quentin,
Yeah,
or
Quentin
whatever.
too, yes.
We never had it before. Somehow we included it in this year's budget, but I may have been thinking it was for the village. I don't know, not just
No,
Doubleday.
I thought we agreed that a while ago, we agreed the village would not be a member of the chamber. It was a very vociferous meeting.
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll follow up on that one. We'll get more info. Okay, anything else? Are we ready to move to page 15? Anything on page 15?
I wondered if we could put $30 in for the historian. I believe that's like the registration cost, and I realize that
It is in there.
oh, sorry. I looked at it incorrectly.
Yeah, we do have it. Anything else on page 15? Page 16. I was wondering about shade trees and the expenditures. Is there commentary?
Well, we sort of two things happened. One, there was an accounting error that made the numbers this year look high. We in essence axed our shade tree budget for this year. We haven't done much of anything at all.
Uh-huh.
You may recall that when we got that tree survey done, their number one critique was that we are not planting enough, that we're going to end up in a situation where we're taking down more every year than we're planting. And that's why the planting number is higher. The shade tree contract, if we could get other people to bid on doing that work, perhaps it would be more competitive, but given our location, there just aren't a lot of people doing that type of work.
Uh-huh. I understand all that. At one time, there were a lot of donations funding our trees. We're not getting those anymore. Is there any way we can encourage the tree donations?
Yeah, absolutely.
So instead of putting them quite so much in there, I don't know, I look at this and I know it's nice when we do our Tree City application to have one budget and look like we're got this, because certainly we planted trees at Doubleday, but we don't include those. We've got some trees planted in the parks, but we're not necessarily including those. But here we're coming up with a very large budget. And I know that to be a tree city, it's only $2 per capita, which would be 3,600, right?
Yeah.
For 1,800 people. And yet we do closer to $27 per person on our trees. And it's nice, we value our trees, but when we've been cutting, when we're actually debating whether to have a safety officer and instead we're looking at trees, I don't know, I think that we need to really look at that.
The cut and trim, I would say, is not optional, right? So not trimming our trees is going to lead to safety issues.
So we have to cut and trim our trees.
Yep. So that's 32,000, but I'm wondering about the 15,000.
Well, so 5,000 of that is emergency work. I mean, we could reduce that number. You can see we don't usually use all of it, but that's if we have an ice storm or the like, and we have to get people out on an emergency basis to do that work. So, I mean, I don't know, Mitch, do you think we could go down to like 4 or 3 for emergency work?
Yeah, we could probably get away with 3.
Okay.
And then, then it's just the question of planting. I mean, and we have for years been taking down more trees than we plant. So there will come a point where we just don't have many trees left.
Maybe this is not the year to worry about it, but it's something to think about down the road. And it's also something to go for, get community involvement, plant a tree.
I mean, you can see if you look back, right? Minimal planting in 16, minimal planting in 17, no planting in 18, no planting in 19, no planting in 20.
It's problematic.
So we have, I mean, I agree that it could be reduced, but if we never plant anything, we won't have any trees.
That's so funny because we certainly have had our Arbor Day tree plantings. So where are those trees recognized here?
They're usually one tree.
Right. but it's like 0, 0, 0. So there was no cost to any of those trees.
I think
I don't
some
know.
of them were donations. I'm not sure if that's true of all of them.
Mhm.
I don't know. This seems to be a fundraising opportunity.
I would
Plant a
agree.
tree in Cooperstown.
And you know, where someone recently had to have a tree taken down in front of their house because it was, you know, it was a village tree and it was risky, they immediately were willing to pay for a replacement tree. So I think, you know, we don't want to miss those opportunities. People kind of like to pick the tree that goes in front of their house, you know. I know in front of my house, the village did not buy my trees. I planted my own trees in the tree lawn. They're village trees now because they're in the tree lawn, but many homeowners, I think, would take that responsibility.
As long as they understand what you just said, which is that they're gifting the village with a tree and they're not considering them their tree.
They don't want to consider them their tree.
I
They're
don't. Once it's
responsible for the
planted in
upkeep.
that tree lawn, when trust me, because one was a particular species that shouldn't have been so aggressively trimmed as it was one year by one of our village crew, long before I became on the board, and they kind of learned how to prune a little better after that, shall I say. So they're 100% village trees once you plant them there, but yeah.
I mean, I would say that we can reduce that number, but I would not zero it out.
Mm-hmm.
Could we go half?
We could go half.
All right, we'll make it 5,000.
And then work on drumming up donations?
For it. Mhm.
Yeah, it sounds like we need to pick up the pace, you know?
How much does it cost to
From
plant a
0.
tree?
The tree itself is probably 300, 400. The planting, you know, that doesn't take into account the actual planting.
We do the planting ourselves, don't we?
We were trying to get away from doing the planting ourselves, which is why the number went up.
To say though that we never plant a tree is kind of, you know, just because it's not reflected in that line. When you think about the Doubleday project, there are now 12 trees in that parking lot that were never there before. So we are bringing trees back into our downtown area. And, you know, we certainly are in our park too. I know you put in for those more too.
Richard, to answer your question, the last time we contracted out to plant the trees, it was about $900 a tree.
You mean for the tree and the planting?
That's tree planting, seeding, mulching, the whole 9.
Okay.
Yeah, and in Pioneer Park, when that project was done, we added 3 little trees, those river birches. So, and, you know, so there are trees going in, certainly. We look like a pretty tree city. All right, is there anything else on page 16? Oh, yes, this is where we wanted to talk about the boat wash. So we did budget in there for some steward funds. You see that?
When do we find
1,000,
out
right?
if there are stewards from the grant?
There are stewards still. It was like a 3-year grant, so we will have stewards them there. But this gets into that whole discussion we were having, Jean, that we need to have, if we don't call them stewards, we need to call them boat wash attendants. We need someone there, and I think we'll have further discussions on this to encourage to collect that fee. And
And if I could ask, to follow up on our conversation, do we want for our protocols, the boats coming in to be washed and the boats going out to be washed? I mean, we have no, I thought one of the big issues was to make sure there was nothing on the boat entering our lake as much as not wanting to transport any. Our lake is probably healthier than other lakes, so we're at the risk of degradation And it would seem to me that the duties of this steward or attendant would be to be in a position to actually direct the boats coming in to Fish Road anyway, and I don't know what we do about Fair Street. But that's the thought. How do we manage that? And then we can decide how much money we can collect as an inspection fee.
So the key is the inspection. For instance, at Goodyear Lake or at Canadarago Lake, they don't have a boat wash station there, but they do have a crisp inspector. And they are inspecting the boats. So it's not like every single boat has to be washed. If they remove any invasive species from it, and I can't tell you, but I do know they keep a lot of data on where was this boat previously, how long has it been out of the water, and did they find anything? They keep a whole sequence on their data loggers, these CRISP stewards, and it's all data that goes to the Catskill authority that is overseeing all these waterways. So you're asking, you want greater clarification of when they should be using the boat wash?
It's if the objective overall is health and safety of the lake, we're trying to manage the cost of that. We've got the infrastructure for the boat wash. So the question is, there's a lot of microscopic material that the eye won't catch, and maybe wet spots too that harbor these invasive species. So it doesn't, is there information that says washing your boat before you put it in the lake is measurably better for the lake?
Okay.
But in any event, whether inspected or washed, obviously it costs more in terms of time for our attendant to participate in washing the boat instead of getting it right on the lake. Either way, we'll get a fee, whether we're just looking at it or washing it. But the question is, as part of this, for me, what role do we want our boat wash to play in this process?
Well, and I think in addition to that, Joe, I am confused as to what the grant funded personnel do, like what their job description is and how that relates to this line in our budget.
There is no line for those grant persons. We used to put in about 30,000 for our stewards. And I think you probably all know some of the ones that we had over several years working down there. But this grant covers 2 stewards for the Cooperstown launch area. And they record all their data, and they are basically environmental studies majors probably who are going into this. So we have not been funding that line because the CRISP stewards were doing it. We never had an issue with that until last year during the pandemic, when we all saw that the boat usage and the usage of the number of boats on Otsego Lake went up exponentially. I believe it was 3 times. They inspected 3 times the number of boats in 2020 that they had done in 2019. And we saw that issue with Fish Road. So it's a couple things we're trying to correct here. One, because they were funded elsewhere, we always used that inspection fee to help fund our stewards, who cost us about $30,000 a year, but we would only get maybe between $12,000 and $14,000 on fees, on that $10 launch fee. So we always were paying for it. So in some ways, we didn't want to look a gift horse in the mouth when suddenly we're getting 2 individuals that are costing us nothing, being down there inspecting the boats, et cetera, and doing it under a grant. But the bottom line is they did not collect any funds. And I think then that repercussion was we had a ridiculous parking situation on Fish Road. And so I think both by monitoring that more, making sure they have a sticker, because that was the gist of our 2017 Fish Road parking regulations, was that if they were inspected, then they put that inspection sticker in their dashboard and they could park there. Now, because nobody's getting that sticker, we again had employees from adjacent businesses parking on Fish Road, plus the incredible increase in Otsego Lake usage, boat usage. There, it became chaotic. If you recall, Gene put together, where are other places you can park? Where can you put your trailers for free, et cetera. So I think what we're trying to do is to have someone there that will be collecting the fee to help offset it, but it will also have the simultaneous advantage of perhaps regulating the parking down there better.
I guess my thought is then, are they duplicative with the biological field station people? Like, is there a clear
I will say that, Chris, one of the stewards, the head steward, had reached out and wanted to meet, and they said, well, we'll be in touch after the first of the year. And I didn't hear anything after the first of the year. I mean, Terry was always the one who handled that end of it. And I had said, Terry's no longer there, but contact us again after the first of the year. And I realized, we passed February 1st and I still hadn't heard. So I've reached out. So there will be a meeting coming up with the stewards. So I'm certainly going to ask, Joe's question about, you're inspecting, but we don't see a lot of use of that boat wash. Is there information about, the importance of getting rid of microscopic creatures with that high temperature wash water? Why isn't that being done? Tell us more about your data. But I think the bottom line is what we're putting in here is someone to represent basically the parking, and trying to help control that is one way to look at it. So are they duplicative? They might be, but they aren't going to be the trained stewards, because these individuals go through several hours of training. And that was one of the reasons I think our stewards petered out. And, the biological field station that oversaw a lot of this did not like the ones we were hiring, because he said they didn't train well, and they, to fill out all this biological information that was useful for that is required for the CRISP grant reporting requirements. So we're going to be asking, so if there's more that you would like there in this meeting, let us know. Joe.
Yeah, in that regard, what is the Fair Street launch? Do we control that? That's our public street?
And the steward, yeah, that's
right. And I've seen stewards kind of ping-ponging between the two. So Lakefront doesn't charge any access fee or doesn't have the right to do that. If I launch my boat on Fair or Fish, does it make any difference?
There was a time that that was called a launch fee, and we had received at some point, parks are always interesting because there are those preservation covenants, that grant that was received 20 plus years ago for that seawall has now meant that we always have to allow public access there. So they were limiting what we could charge. And that's why it became really what it was, which was an inspection fee more than we're giving you the right to launch here. So we can charge that fee.
For the inspection fee, and I'm fine with that. I'm just wanting to know if there is, Lakefront doesn't have a right to charge.
Yeah, and whether you launch at Fish Road or you launch at Fair, prior to the CRISP stewards, you would be paying that $10.
Okay, but no, Lakefront doesn't get to charge more, is what I'm, for some.
No, and that was the one that we actually, DEC had concerns about, because they actually had that as a I have pictures of it, you know, up to about 6 years ago, there was a DEC sign there because they had contributed funds at one point. And actually DEC was one of the big funders of that boat wash station. So we're kind of, you know, we have to not, what shall I say, start in any way inhibiting access. But
No,
certainly
you're
we're- Oh,
you're
okay, I'm sorry.
misunderstanding me. I am,
Oh, I'm
I am
sorry.
not trying to find more money or create false charges. I'm just trying to understand. I'm starting from the point of view of the boat wash being a place where you actually clean boats and not just account for boats that may or may not be cleaned, and then you go on to the lake. So there's an actual prevention thing. It's not just a testing station, it's a cleaning station to get out what we don't want in the lake. So in terms of making that as productive as possible and then keeping statistics that we have to keep on that, how do we control the flow of boats in and out, maximizing the use of the health and, you know, the health of the lake benefit of the system without costing ourselves too much money in the process in terms of having to pay staff to be all over the boat owners. So it's, yes, let's collect as much of the fees as we can, but let's also have that because we are inspecting the boats and making them healthy. That's,
Yeah, right. And certainly I think you had a legitimate concern. Should we also, you know, basically back up the line and make every single boat, what are the statistics on the spread of microorganisms that, you know, aren't seen with the visual inspection that the boat stewards, that the CRISP stewards are doing? Should there be more high water? And that is one of the questions that's going to be raised. I think one thing you always have to remember, though, we are just one launch site on that lake, and we're the only launch site that tries to really work amidst this and has those CRISP stewards and has traditionally had stewards. There are no stewards. There's no inspection at one of the busiest launch sites on the lake, and it's a private launch site. So there you go. So, you know, we can do our best, but I can assure you, I don't think we should necessarily feel guilty for every little organism that gets in there when there is a major marina up the lake that is not having any regulations.
but
That's
if
within the town of Otsego.
Are we speaking of Sam Smith's?
No,
Okay.
No.
Because they seem to be all resident boats, or mostly resident
Right.
boats. that
Yeah.
don't go year-round.
no, not at all.
Okay. Okay,
Right, so shall we leave the 30 and we'll get more information as we meet with those stewards and, you know, I feel like we'll work with Jean as chair of parks to try and resolve some of those Fish Road parking issues that we had previously.
Yep, thank you.
All right, we're at 7. I said I wouldn't go much past 7, so we are at almost the end of the the general fund, the A budget. So I had, were we done with 16? We'll move to 17, our last page. My only question there, Deb, was I know we've got transfer to capital projects 385, and I just wanted to double check that that was 200 for Doubleday.
Well, I will check that out. I'm not sure if that was Doubleday or if that was the other.
Okay, we can just double check it. I know we did discuss that, and I said, just like in our current 2021 budget, we have 200 going to our Doubleday capital project. We were going to duplicate that again this year. So well, we'll follow up on that for the next one. And
Okay.
maybe if we list what it is underneath it, then we'll know.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, the rest, we have the water and sewer funds. As I say, there are rich uncles and very self-sustaining, generate good surpluses, etc. Was there anything else that people wanted to focus on in these remaining pages? I think our hard work is on the general fund, which we worked very hard on just now. Any questions? Any?
Yeah, I would just say that, as I mentioned to Ellen, I'll tell the others that Mitch supplied me with his drafts of the water and sewer budgets, and we went over them, and so I'm content with them. We can all look at them as need be, but I think they're in good shape.
Okay. And Cindy, are you content with trolley?
Well, I think at some point we have to have a discussion about what trolley looks like this summer. It's, we don't know what Dreams Park is doing. Yeah, I'm not sure that we can do that at this point or even before the tentative is due. Yeah.
All right. So why don't we look at our calendars while we're all together here? So, and schedule another Zoom meeting for the budget. Maybe, shall we do 2 weeks hence? And if we do that, it would be Wednesday, March 3rd, similar arrangement, 5:15 to 7.
Had we already picked a date? Don't we already have a second date booked?
Thought we had the 24th.
Oh, we have the 24th. We're doing 2 in a row. We're going for it. All right.
We set 2 of them, yeah.
Okay, you're right. We did. All right, then I stand chastised, and we will we'll try and get all those figures that we're missing there, and get that budget out to you. Hopefully, we can get it by the board meetings Monday, right? When is our board meeting? Yeah. So it might be Tuesday. We'll get that budget out if that's good for everyone. That'll give time to get those estimates on the roof, et cetera, and for people to look at it for a day or so before we have another meeting. Does that work for everyone?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.